The DNC's Delusional Night 2 in the books. Deep State Yates goes full lib. Democrats dust off Russia insanity. And Goodyear bans MAGA hats? Welcome, everybody, to the Buck Sexton Show. Honor and a privilege to have you here, as it always is. And now with each passing day, it's like we're both hurtling toward and slowly crawling toward the election. Depends on what time of day you ask me. I can't tell if the time is flying or if it's like we're locked in solitary confinement and all the time just blends together. But we are going to get there soon to the election, and it will. The good news is that it will be done at some point. That I can promise you. The bad news is that if we lose, things are going to be pretty rough, and the president certainly understands that. Play clip 4.
You know better than anyone, the survival of our nation is at stake in this election, and I will tell you, I never thought I'd say it because we had a great election. We had a great election a little while ago. 4 years ago, I never thought I'd say anything could compete with 2016. This election that we're going into is the most important election in the history of our country. Because we had crooked Hillary, but this is something, these people are sick, and we have to make sure that this radical left, socialist and beyond, because this is beyond socialism, this is beyond socialism, that it doesn't happen, or we will indeed have Venezuela on steroids, so we can't do it.
So here's what I would want to spend some time on today. When people talk about the survival of the nation is at stake, that I think automatically at least sounds to most of us like political exaggeration, right? The fiery words of a political season. But isn't it possible for the nation of a survival to truly be at stake? And by that, I do not mean that everyone in the country will die. It's not that all of us individually, our survival is at stake. No, let's just posit here for the purposes of discussion as the DNC really just tries to misrepresent what it is and is rewriting history every night in real time, as well as just constantly lying. There's constant lying that goes on. They always accuse Trump of that. I think it's so fascinating. Democrats can't speak, it seems, about any policy issue or any major issue of political contention without just making stuff up, making crap up. That's what they do. But the survival of the nation, when I think of that term, I'm thinking of, is it the same country at its core, at its essence that it was before? Is it possible for a nation to die? Well, of course, we know if a country is invaded by a foreign country, it can be overrun, overtaken, the nation. We've seen this all throughout history. In fact, human history is really in many ways a cataloging, when you look back into what we've paid attention to, a cataloging of the powerful invading and overtaking the weak in different parts of the world for as long as we've had human history and eliminate. Sometimes they bring in that society into their own, and there can be more pleasant ways for societies to combine than just the force of arms. But generally speaking, it's seizure from the outside, and that country can cease to exist. In fact, if you look in ancient Greek literature, you look at the most famous epic poem of all time, the Iliad. It's about the destruction of a city and how the ancient Greeks considered that the elimination of a polis, which was their equivalent of a nation state. The elimination of the polis was the worst calamity that could befall mankind. There could be nothing worse than the absolute destruction of a city, because then it also usually meant the enslavement and or murder of all of its inhabitants. Now, I'm not worried about the Democrats yet trying to round us all up into camps or anything like that, and I'm really not worried about that. I am worried about what happens to this country if they win this election. Is it the same country once they've had their way for 4 years? And I think that perhaps we've forgotten a little bit, because we've had 3 years of a Trump corrective to the Obama presidency, just how radical and how far the Obama administration took us toward socialism and state control. He didn't get everything. There were some areas they were stymied on amnesty. They were blocked on full federalization of whether we're talking about the climate, of healthcare. There were some places where they weren't able to go all the way, but they keep, as progressives, there is actually a lot of truth in that name, because they keep progressing along with their agenda. They would say it's progress for the betterment of humanity and of America, but I'm telling you that they are incrementally gaining ground, right? Conservatives for a long time now have been on defense, and this is part of our philosophical disadvantage. You know, the old line, standing athwart history, yelling stop, right? From Buckley. That's what we're supposed to do. The problem with that is that we're going to eventually not be there to stand athwart that history, right? We're eventually in a position where they get something, and then we don't want to use the same state mechanisms to push back what they've taken. We say, okay, that's settled now, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's aspects of our culture even now. I don't even know how anyone can make jokes anymore. Nothing's allowed to be funny. We have allowed humor, and this seems small, but it's not small. We've allowed humor in America to be effectively eliminated. There are some very small areas where you're allowed to make jokes. There are so many things that I would love to let rip on this show, but I know that, while funny, might get me in a bit of trouble, and in this cancel culture we live in, it's just not worth it. You do a risk calculation. It is just not worth it. And this is all throughout our day-to-day now. And because of social media, everybody is now plugged into the matrix of politics. Just walking outside your home now, just going out on the street. Oh, you're not wearing a mask? Someone might take a photo of you. That could go viral. You have an argument with somebody in the store. If you go into a restaurant and say, why am I wearing a mask when I walk in, but then I sit down and the mask is down? This doesn't make sense. Somebody might start a fight with you about that, go on video. And so now you have the hyper-politicization of society, which has been going on now for years. And you also have a Democrat scorched earth, stop-at-nothing approach to power, right? And this is why the Marxism at the root of, say, the BLM movement and ultimately the statism, I know this seems contradictory, but there is statism at the heart of Antifa as well. They call themselves Antifa, but liberals call themselves liberal, and they're anti-liberty, right? Which is why I call them libs, as a not fond shorthand. Antifa says they're anti-fascist, but they doth protest too much. They are, in fact, much closer to fascists than any other political movement in the country at this point. Do what they say. They have a list of demands, and they're demands for the state. The state must do the following things and have the power to enact the following policies. They are statists. They are fascists. They seek the levers of government power. They do not actually want anarchy. Not in the sense that people usually consider anarchy. I mean, the classical anarchists who had fights stretching back to the turn of the 20th century, in the late 19th century, fights with the Marxists, the socialists over what the best society would be. The classical anarchists, and you can look at Mikhail Bakunin, and there are others that wrote about the need to eliminate state power in order to have independent collectives, which starts to sound a lot more like communism. But that's fanciful pie-in-the-sky stuff that never really caught on. Antifa today is, in fact, an entity of the Democrat Party that also pretends to be as American as apple pie when it is a socialist party. So when we're talking about as the president says, the survival of a nation at stake, nations can die from politics and culture. A nation can end itself because there are enough people, and it doesn't have to be a majority, and it usually isn't. It's a dedicated minority that decides this country needs to be radically upended. Bernie Sanders uses rhetoric like we need a political revolution in this country. Ocasio-Cortez is calling for revolutionary changes to our system. They put Biden forward because he is supposed to fool people. Oh, it can't be that bad. He is a figurehead of the establishment so-called normalcy that the Democrats are pretending they still represent. But the moment you dig down into the policies, the things they approve, the things they disapprove of, you recognize that this is a party that has moved dramatically from where it was even 20 years ago, even 15 years ago. Conservatives largely want the same things. Right? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, contracts to be honored, streets to be safe from crime, everyone to be judged in the same way under the law, race-neutral, race-blind justice system, low taxes, limited government. You know, we have a philosophy that we try to stick to over time. The philosophy hasn't shifted. Sometimes we're imperfect with it, but we're still trying to, because we think that's what creates, and now we can get into Plato and Socrates, but we think that's what creates a good society. For Democrats, it's about racking up wins. They're progressives. We want this. We want abortion for all 9 months of a pregnancy. Got it. Good. Put that aside. We want racially conscious. We want essentially the racial entitlement state. Good. Have that. Keep that. We want a government that can spend trillions and trillions of dollars a year creating financial bondage for future generations that they have no say in because that gives us power now. Good. Got it. Add that to the ledger. They keep racking up wins because they view it as the accumulation of power. We, on the other side of this, are trying to say, no, hold on. Let's decentralize. Let's move power aside. Let's let individuals make choices. Let's pursue freedom. Freedom is under assault now, friends. It's under assault in a way that I've never seen it before in my lifetime. This is worse than the aftermath of 9/11 from a civil liberties perspective, from a government intrusiveness perspective. We're seeing things that I would have assumed the American people would revolt against. Shutting down private parties, threatening to arrest people because they won't do something that they claim is scientifically necessary with wearing a bandana over your face, but there's actually no science that proves that this is necessary. And any scientific necessity through policy would have to be a question of benefit, risk and reward. It's not even viewed that way. It's do what we say or else. Do what we say or else. Was Russia the same country after the October Revolution and the Soviets took power? No, of course not. It changed its name even. So we know that a country can end. That wasn't foreign invasion. That was internal dissent. Those were radicals from within their own society that had been around for many years. Stalin was an agitator in the Georgian underground for a long time. Of course, his name isn't Stalin. That means man of steel. His name was Joseph Jugashvili. But he was running in these commie circles, and guess what? He was a journalist of sorts. A man who would print these little pamphlets about the need for a more equitable, a more fair society. And then eventually, at the moment that was most vulnerable to the Russian nation state and the state of the czars, he and, others along with him, Lenin, were able to seize power, transform the whole country. Do you really think that if Joe Biden gets into power, Kamala Harris is his VP, that they won't pursue amnesty, which will mean that the Democrat Party will, what we see in California, will become America? Very high taxes, the racial entitlement state, where some people get some benefits that other people don't get, criminality excused, litter and lawlessness in the streets justified, and inept government promising things that it can't deliver on, taking from the middle class and pretending they're actually really taking from the rich, who will always find ways to avoid this pain. And also rich people raising their taxes isn't really going to be noticed that much. But for people that are making $50K, $100K, $150K, taxes matter a lot. So that's what's going to happen. The Californiaization of the whole country if the next election goes to the Democrats. Does that mean that America is the same place afterwards? I wouldn't be surprised if in time they wanted to start having constitutional amendments, excise some constitutional amendments. They'll remove the Second Amendment if they can. Oh, they can't, Buck? Why? You think Texas will stay red forever? You think Florida is going to stay red forever? They use the system of government itself to promote the political party that is the Democrats, that is the socialists. They leverage this themselves. And look at the way that they use institutions. The teachers' unions, Democrat power center, right? the federal government and all of its various bureaucrats, Democrat power center. Hollywood, academia, all these different places that create perception, unfortunately, in our society, they're all in the tank for the Democrat Party. You think they really can't pull this off? Look at where we are now. We're in a society where you will be mocked and ridiculed for saying that you don't want your 12-year-old girl in school to be showering next to a 12-year-old boy, and you can't call him a boy anymore. And this is real, folks. This is happening right now. You think that they're going to stop? No, the Democrat Party is going through both a mass delusion and a mental illness brought on by Trump, which they view him as a threat to all that they hold dear and what they think about themselves. And so whatever it takes to defeat him, they'll do. And the people that are most equipped to defeat him are the same ones that are the most radical. The people that are willing to do anything to exploit the media, to use academia illicitly against this president. The deep state actors within the federal government, they want to destroy him. And once they do, once they beat him, who's going to hold them back? Oh, you think this Republican Party is just ready with all the fighters in the background? I don't think so. The survival of the nation is, in fact, at stake, because if you think America is a set of ideas, traditions, history, and culture, all of that is under assault from the Democrats. They want to change it. They are telling you that's the goal. They are taking actions already to that end. And they want this to be a very fundamentally different country. As Obama said, a fundamental transformation of this country if they win the next election. That's the goal. That's the plan. And those are the stakes. From #1 New York Times bestselling author Brad Thor comes his gripping new thriller, Near Dark. Near Dark is the latest release in the Scott Harvath series. It's an instant #1 in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller lists. Look, they say you can't put a price on freedom, but the world's largest bounty has just been placed on America's top spy. He's got to unravel the enemy's deadly plot before darkness prevails. His only hope for survival is to outwit, outrun, and outlast his enemies long enough to get to the truth. But for Scott Harvath to accomplish his most dangerous mission ever, one that has already claimed the lives of people closest to him, including his new wife, he's going to need help, and a lot of it. Who can he trust? He finds an unlikely ally in a Norwegian intelligence operative who's just as smart, just as deadly, and determined as he is. Pick up your new copy of Brad Thor's Near Dark today. Available wherever books are sold, on Amazon. Check it out. Brad Thor's newest Scott Harvath thriller, Near Dark.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. I mean, I hear the boos. How the hell did she win the primary? How the hell did she win? This woman is crazy. She's a horrible woman who hates our country. Yeah, mail-in vote. You're right there, right? We'll have to check that. Let's check the mail-in vote. Now, seriously, how does a woman who hates our country, who says nothing but bad things about our country and Israel and other of our allies, how does this woman win? Where are the people that would vote for her? Omar called the Minneapolis police a cancer and said they were rotten to the root. But Joe Biden did not condemn the comments. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't disavow her endorsement. He displays it proudly on his website. This is what's going to be running the country.
It's true. AOC, Tlaib, Pelosi is fine with all of this too, as long as she stays in power. She has no problem with this, and she's a lib. That's what you're going to see. You know, these are the people. These are the individuals. You know, Schumer and Pelosi and Tlaib and Omar. They're going to be running the country if Trump loses this election. How does that make anybody who cares about this country feel? I can't believe we're losing our home that we never sold. That's what Deborah said when she found out that she was the victim of home title theft, which is a crime that can actually cost you your home. Here's how it works. The bad guys can find your information online, cyber thieves, not that hard for them. And then they forge your signature stating you sold your home to them. You often won't find out about this until the eviction notice arrives. Don't let yourself get caught off guard by this growing crime. Make sure you use Home Title Lock. Home Title Lock creates a virtual barrier around your home's title. All you have to do is go to HomeTitleLock.com and use promo code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. You can also check to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it yet. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK for 30 free days of protection to protect you, your home, your finances. HomeTitleLock.com. Longtime listeners of this show know that I've been saying that Deep State Yates was a partisan hack all along. It was obvious. Her completely unnecessary grandstanding. I will not carry out the order of this president when it comes to the travel ban. Remember, the travel ban ended up being upheld by the Supreme Court, so Sally Yates might need a legal refresher. But she showed everybody who she was there, and that was a brand move for her. That was, all the libs now know who she is, after she had been working from behind the shadows, behind the fiction of her civil service role, just helping out the country, helping out people. No political beliefs whatsoever. That's what she wants you to think. Hiding behind that fiction for many years at the DOJ, along with people like Strzok and Page and Lynch and Comey, and right, this is all part of it. And I've known that she's somebody who hated Trump and was a giant lib and was one of these deep staters all along. And I think she was much more involved in some of the efforts to take down the Trump administration than we have even yet found. I've always thought she was the one who, when she heard about the Logan Act and all this stuff, trying to get General Flynn, was involved in all of this in ways that we have yet to fully even understand. I'm hoping the Durham report will at least give us clarity on that. But, and I've told you, I think that you've seen probably your only prosecution from the Durham report already. And if that's the case, I'm right. And I've been right all along. So we'll see. I could be wrong. But when they go after someone like Yates or Comey, when they bring charges against somebody of that stature, then we'll know that the GOP is going to get some justice. Then we'll know that the DOJ is serious. The left goes all the way. The right always says, well, we don't want to be too rough. And we see how that plays out time and again across our country. But here is Yates doing exactly what I knew she would do, which is just red meat. Why is she speaking of the DNC? I thought she was a nonpartisan civil servant. Oh, you mean she's actually a Democrat hack operative? Kind of like it wasn't really the Mueller probe, it was the Weissman probe. We were told, oh no, he's a career DOJ guy. He's not some ideological Democrat using the prosecutor's powers to go after his political enemy. Oh, and then he came out and was going to start doing fundraisers for the DNC. Friends, let's stop with this nonsense. Look, I always say this. There are certain situations in which I know that I can't trust people if I think that they're a committed ideological lib professionally. It's very, very hard to do that. I think you do that at your own risk. Too many ways to get hurt with that. So here's Sally Yates saying that Putin was trying to pick our president. The return of the Russia collusion delusion. Play 11.
Well, I think that this report establishes the same thing that the Mueller report did and the same thing that our intel community had found before, but they've done it in even greater detail now. And that is that the Russians were interfering in our election to try to assist Donald Trump. Essentially, Vladimir Putin was trying to pick our president. And the even more frightening thing, I think, is that they're still up to it. They're still working now in this election.
They're still working now in this. There's still Putin's trying to pick Trump. The Russians at this point have just got to be laughing their asses off at us, or at least at the Democrats that continue. Well, no, probably all of us, because we have to sit around and deal with this. This is idiocy. Putin didn't pick Trump, okay? 63 million Americans, or whatever the number was in 2016, who voted for him did. Trump has, 97%, 99% approval in the Republican Party? I mean, this is a fantasy, but she continues with this. This was part of what you saw at the DNC last night. These people have learned nothing. Have you ever seen her out there apologizing for spying illegally on Carter Page? Oh, but Buck, they used the FISA process. Yeah, they cheated in the FISA process. You know, this would be like a cop who shows up at the scene of a suspected criminal's house and plants a gun, and then for years we hear, well, they found the gun in his house. Yeah, but they planted it there. They cheated. But no, they don't care. People are so one of the big issues with this whole Russia gate, Spygate mess is that it proves who has good judgment and who's actually smart, who could really think through that issue and figure it out. All these liberals who think they're very bright, oh, look at their credentials and look at the careers they've had in government service or whatever. They believed all this because they're just not as smart as they thought they were. That's very important. Ego, the connection from ego to politics matters a lot to people. And as I've said, it's one of the most powerful aspects of the Democrat brand. It gives very unimpressive people an excuse to think they are much more impressive than they are. That's one of the most powerful parts of being a liberal today. It comes with all of this, oh, look at me, I'm one of the smart, good people. I care so much because I vote Democrat. I care so much about the poor. I care so much about downtrodden minorities, right? I care so much because I vote for Joe Biden. I don't think that casting a vote for Donald Trump means something about a person. It means that they want things that they believe Donald Trump will do in office. And they support his actions as president, or the actions he would take and now would take again for 4 more years. But Sally Yates, I've known all along. She reminds me of people that I knew in the intelligence community when I worked there that have been around a long time, and they were just the most smug, sanctimonious lives, mediocrities, intellectual mediocrities who burrow deep into the bureaucracy and become the bureaucracy and mediocrity. They become somebody who we're supposed to look up to and listen to. It's terrifying that she was making decisions at the DOJ that affected people's lives. She's not a just person. She believes all this crap. I'm sure she would tell you that Roe v. Wade was a good constitutionally sound decision, which is dumb, right? I'm sure she would say all the things that you would expect a lib to say. She was acting attorney general of this country under the Trump administration, granted during the transition, but that's what was happening here. That's how high up the chain she went. And now she's a hero over at MSNBC, speaking at the DNC and willing to carry water for the weekend at Bernie's presidency of Joe Biden. Play 10.
Well, I think Joe Biden is absolutely up to the task. You know, when I think about this election, to me, it all really comes down to who do you trust? Who do you trust to put the country first? Who do you trust to live up to our values? And who do you trust to tell us the truth? Joe Biden, has all of those things. And when people talk about, the decency and integrity that he has, that's absolutely the case.
The decency and integrity that he has. Let's think about that for a moment. We know that he has been a plagiarist. We know that he's lied about his background, just flat out lied to puff himself up for political advantage. And we know that Democrats, until what feels like 5 minutes ago, recognized that he was an unimpressive and just generally deficient politician. He was a senator from Delaware, which is really like being the, top alderman for the city of San Francisco or something. Like, no one's really that impressed. It's just not anything that you would think is a stepping stone to the presidency. And yet they forget all of this now and tell us that he's such a good man. Why is he such a good man? I want to know. Was he such a good man when he would go swimming naked in front of female members of his Secret Service detail? Was that really respectful and cool? Was that a cool thing for him? Because he did that. I've been told that by people who are on his Secret Service detail. So was that really cool? Was that really respectful, great guy thing to do? They have torn everything about Trump's life apart. They have lied about him. They've brought up divorces. They've made these accusations about, Stormy Daniels, who has no evidence that she ever actually had a relationship with Trump. But somehow she has no evidence of it. But, we're supposed to believe her. And she had the most dishonest and disgusting lawyer in the country. Remember that guy? I mean, the Democrats keep assuming that we all have no memory of what they've said before and what they're willing to do. They had, it's funny, I want to call him the creepy porn lawyer, which I know is what Tucker calls him. I'm forgetting his name now. What's that guy's name? He's it's not Scaramouche. The Mooch is a different guy. No, the creepy porn lawyer. Who's the you know who I'm talking about. He's now in a position where I think he's going to federal prison. Avenatti, I remembered now. Avenatti. Michael Avenatti. He was on CNN 70 times, I think, at one point, over a 3-month period. 70 times that guy was on. He was like the most frequent guest on CNN for a while. A total scum. An unethical. This is a guy who steals money from a client of his, who's in a wheelchair. Democrats elevated this person, elevated him, said that he was great, thought about maybe having him run for president. But now they want to play the, we care so much about character game for Joe Biden's benefit. Joe Biden has lied repeatedly about the tragic accident that killed his then wife, and I believe it was his daughter. I know he lost a child. I think it was a daughter, not a son. He's lied about that and said that the guy was drunk, a horrible slander. The guy was not drunk. The car accident, there's actually a record of this. His wife drifted into the lane with an oncoming truck, and it was a tragedy, a horrible tragedy. But the truck, nobody was drunk on the other side. That's a really terrible thing, but it's part of Joe Biden's just make stuff up. It says that he marched in the civil rights movement. He never marched. Said that he was arrested to go see Mandela, was never really arrested. I mean, this guy is a serial fabricator. And, he's got his son, Hunter, on the boards of companies and using his name and all this stuff. And everybody knew, they'll all pretend they didn't now, that was gross and unethical, even if it wasn't necessarily illegal, but who knows? But Joe Biden, such an honorable, decent guy. How? Because he's got a big grin and will shake hands and, puts on the whole blue-collar Joe, I ride Amtrak thing. He's worth like $40 million now. Gave a lot of speeches and did a lot of glad handing for big checks as soon as he could. Now, I'm not opposed to people making money in this world, but it's at the political level, it feels a little bit like buying influence, right? Joe Biden's speeches are not worth $100K or $150K a pop. Just like Hillary Clinton. How many Clinton speeches do you think there are right now, or there have been in recent years, where Bill or Hillary gets $500,000 for a speech? How many of those do you think there have been? I'm going to go on 0 since Hillary lost, because it wasn't really about paying for speeches. It was about buying influence. But again, we're told that Joe Biden is so ethical and so decent from someone like Sally Yates, who I'm sure hasn't lost a night's sleep about the ruination of General Flynn's character and life by her and her colleagues out of partisan spite, because they are such crybabies. There are a lot of things that I believe are defining characteristics for Democrats, but being a bunch of crybabies is at the top of the list. If they don't get their way, they freak out. They don't have the mental and emotional and spiritual fortitude to accept that, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You move on. This is why they can't accept that they lost the 2016 election. They couldn't accept they lost the 2000 election. Because it's a party of crybabies. And Sally Yates is a part of it, and she's a cheerleader for all the crybabies.
Donald Trump says we're leading the world. Well, we are the only major industrial economy to have its unemployment rate tripled. At a time like this, the Oval Office should be a command center. Instead, it's a storm center. There's only chaos. Just one thing never changes: his determination to deny responsibility and shift the blame. The buck never stops there. Now you have to decide whether to renew his contract or hire someone else. If you want a president who defines the job as spending hours a day watching TV and zapping people on social media, he's your man. Denying, distracting, and demeaning works great if you're trying to entertain or inflame. But in a real crisis, It collapses like a house of cards. COVID just doesn't respond to any of that. To beat it, you've got to actually go to work and deal with the facts. Our party is united in offering you a very different choice.
Notice how they always say there's a failure of leadership with Trump and that we could have beaten COVID. If we did what exactly? What's the claim there? India, huge surge in cases in the last couple of months. Brazil, huge surge in cases. What were we supposed to do that was going to beat COVID? I never say. But more importantly to me right now than that comment from Bill Clinton is the photo of him getting a back rub from one of the Epstein sex slaves that the Daily Mail published. I got to say, hats off. The Daily Mail is one of the best websites out there these days. Ever since Drudge abandoned us and went crazy, you know, the Daily Mail, yeah, there's a lot of tabloidy trash stuff, but they break big stories. They got the George Floyd first 10 minutes of the arrest video out. They got this, the photos of Bill Clinton getting a back rub. They break news that Democrats don't want. Right now, you can see that the national news media, they're not going to do anything that hurts Democrat chances. Now, I don't want to get conspiratorial about the Epstein stuff because that's very easy to do, but I will say Bill Clinton has lied about this. He has lied about his the frequency of his travel and his travel to so-called Pedophile Island. He's lied about these things. And Bill Clinton talking about the propriety of what's going on in the Oval Office is beyond comedy. Yeah, you know, when I was there, I would just be like, hey, what's up? And, you know, I'd say, you know what I really need right now? I need some time with an intern. I need to mentor that intern for a long, long time. So everyone else just shut the doors. And that is who the Democrats rallied around, defended. Let's recall that for all their stuff about Trump hasn't done anything while he's the president in the Oval Office that is in the same universe as the stuff that Bill Clinton was doing when it comes to propriety, when it comes to decency and an honorableness. And yet he's still speaking at the DNC. I honestly, no person of intelligence should give a crap what Bill Clinton has to say about anything. Bill Clinton is like an accident of political history. The only reason that his presidency wasn't a disaster was because he managed to get out of office before we got hit with 9/11, which was all the momentum, all the planning was occurring while he was the president, wasn't doing crap about it because he was too worried about the Monica hearings. And he got very lucky with the creation, really, and the exponential expansion of the internet and all the economic activity that came along with that, and had a divided government and Newt Gingrich and a Republican Congress. So they were able to hold him in check at some level, but there's nothing impressive about Bill Clinton. People look at the Bill Clinton legacy. What was it exactly? You go back and look at what his federal government, I mean, it's just stunning.